data that is out there, PCI data, it's all data, those ones and zeros. Now, knowing your data is the whole thing about being able to secure and protect. That is what data resilience is about in this first example. Now, if you look at the amount of data that everybody is creating in a single day, suddenly data doesn't become so simplistic. If you think about the top right-hand side, that is 463 exabytes of data that is created every day that is being forecast for 2025. That's only 2 years away. That's every single day. The 4 terabytes is the current data creation each day just by connected cars. And on the right-hand side, 28 petabytes is what we all use, hopefully, in our health and exercise devices. Your smartwatches that you have. That is how much data every day is being created. That's brand new data that is being developed every day. But creating data is only one part of this. What we also have is consumption of data. Currently in 2023, we're at 118 zettabytes of data being consumed every year by everyone around the globe. And that's forecast to grow up to the 149. And by the way, it doesn't finish there. We go from zettabytes to yottabytes afterwards. So it shows the enormity of what we're dealing with. But if we calm ourselves down, we can still maintain this environment. But to be able to do that, we need to know individually and by our businesses, how much data do you really have? I could ask anybody today in any business, and I think at least 95% wouldn't know how much structured and unstructured data they have. They also wouldn't be able to tell me intrinsically what it is. Is it database systems? Is it unstructured documents and PowerPoints and spreadsheets that are out there? And where is it? Where is it in your environment? Because a lot of people will deal with the infrastructure that everybody knows exists. But what about shadow IT? Where have you a business unit that the CISO, CIO doesn't know that they're using certain applications to allow them to get that business advantage? We also need to know who's using it, who's accessing it, and for what purpose. This isn't about identity and access management at this point of allowing or privilege access management. This is who is accessing it every single day. And do you know that? And what are they using it for? And then what is the purpose for keeping that data? As I mentioned before, no one deletes data. They keep it all. But why are you keeping it? When I started in the storage industry, people used to have 8 different copies of data because that's what the storage manufacturer said you should keep. Really great selling point. But what purpose? We know that in backup and recovery, you have 3 copies of data for different reasons, but you also have the primary. So where is it being created? And then who has copied it? And where's it being used that is just being shared around the system? And then accessibility. Do you know through data resilience what the risk is if that data is not accessible to the applications, to the devices? And then worst of all, what's the risk if it's stolen or misused? All of these are standard operating practices for data resilience. Now, what I'm going to do in the first instance is to make this personal. Everybody loves cash. Everybody loves money. We don't use cash in its handheld form too much today since the pandemic, but it's still there. So if you look at each of these, you can now start to look at the volume. Do you have tens or hundreds or thousands of dollars available to you? What type is it? Is it cash? Is it credit? Is it debit? Have you keep it in the bank, credit union, or are you really savvy and you just keep it under your bed? Yeah, because that's the safest place for you. And then who's using your cash? Do you spread it around your family? Or retailers got it? And then how are you using it? Yeah, when somebody says, well, I've got a $10 bill in my hand, what am I going to use that for? Yeah, is it for my current account? Am I saving it? Am I going to give it to somebody else that is there? But most important to us is, yes, having hold of it in our hands is good, is what if it's not accessible? What if my ATMs don't work? What if my payments from government, private organizations can't send me the money I require? Does that mean I default on things? I can't get cash. I have no debit availability to me. And worst of all, if it's stolen or misused, how does that affect me as an individual? Does that mean I now need to go and get loans? I replace it? Or do I lose things from it? I get repossessed. You go from the extreme to managing the environment, as we did at the top, about how much cash I've got. Now, when we look at that with data, it's the same approach. How much data have I got? And it doesn't matter whether or not you've got 10 gigabytes, 100 gigabytes, or an exabyte. Your business, no matter whether you class yourself a small commercial enterprise, requires that data for you to operate. So it's as valuable, whether it's in 1 megabyte than it is if it's in an exabyte. As somebody once asked me, what would be my response if the accessibility of my data couldn't be guaranteed because somebody had stolen 1 million pieces of data? I said, I'm not worried about 1 million. I'm worried about mine. I'm selfish. I worry about what's my data and how's it being used. And we know as businesses, if you can't access that data, it impacts your operational agility because you can't use those computers or devices or web interfaces, and it will affect your revenue. And worst of all, if it's stolen or misused, you will lose customers. Your reputation will get hit, maybe just for a small period of time, but it's still there. And worst of all, you become non-compliant, especially if you're in a regulated industry. Now, let's turn this back personal. And people always say to me, what's the most personal thing that you can deal with? And I said, that's healthcare data, because it's about me. It's about us. And we each have gigabytes of data about us floating around data centers, cloud infrastructures in all different areas. And as we know what they will use this for, the healthcare organizations. But if my data cannot be accessed by those organizations, I can't make appointments. I can't have treatment. And the worst thing of all is that somebody could disclose my healthcare information to people I don't want it disclosed to. So these are the sort of things we have to look at when we deal with data resilience. And that center part about data is understanding all of that as it relates to volume type, location, user purpose, accessibility, and damage. Now, we know that your businesses are resilient in an active environment, not reactive. And to give you an example of this, I found a really nice picture of a building that I believe is in the Caribbean. And it's a lovely building. But as we know, when you build a risk management process, you make sure you are resilient. So if something dramatic happens, such as it catches fire, you have fires going on in that building, you don't wait to see the outcome, i.e. the building is damaged, even with the fire brigade coming along. And then you have to then look at the situation where you've got to rebuild that building with all of the components that are required. What happens is in business, you put simple things in, such as fire extinguishers, i.e. water sprinkler systems in, because that contains the fire. It stops the fire from spreading. It keeps it in one place. And that is active. Yeah. If you get a fire in that office, sprinkler kicks in, hopefully it stops it. Yeah. The smallest amount of damage possible. That's where resilience is active against being reactive and requiring a rebuild. And that happens the same in data. Data must be active in the environment, not reactive, for it to be data resilience. So we look at the active environment, and here we have my expression of data in different forms, whether it's structured, semi-structured, or unstructured in place. By the way, semi-structured means it's in an email system. So it's still structured, but it's not in its normal place of environment. But what can happen is an exception, an event happens. And those events can be anything from a malware attack on your system. And we've seen lots and lots of those type of pictures. Your patching system has gone awry, i.e. somebody's put a new patch in, it hasn't worked, i.e. it's creating a problem with your computer. It's nowhere near as bad as the SolarWinds patching experience. This is normal patching where you need to revert back. Or somebody has overwritten the data and they shouldn't have done that. And then the final one at the bottom is our oops one, i.e. somebody has done something inadvertently that they shouldn't have done. Now, I call them WIMPs, W-I-M-P. And it stands for well-meaning, well-intentional, meaningful people. In other words, they thought they were helping out when actually they weren't. So they're trying to do that. They may have taken their data home and something's happened so that they could get it ready for the next day. Now, in those environments, when that happens, the CIO, the CISO, the head of security, the head of IT, operations that you have, has now got a headache. As I mentioned, data events don't happen in a timely manner. They happen when something else is going on, and that causes the problems. So what happens is the revert that you have to rely on is traditional. It's tapes, it's disks. And what you do is you have to take those backups of your data. As I said, normally 3 of them. One of them will be on site, another one off site, and another one in a mutable or tape type of storage that is available. But you're rebuilding at this point, and that is reactive. It is not active. What needs to happen is you need to extend the active timeline. And by the way, this is why I've got my 2 esteemed colleagues on with me. Everything I talk about is available. You can do this now. You just may not have come across it. Is the data that is behind after these events happen, do not get compromised, so that it's not available to that. And what we want to make sure is that when an active event happens, all of your time-sensitive data, i.e. for your operations, can never be compromised and can be brought back, including the devices. So we're talking in data here, computer OSs, computer data, stopping people from compromising it. This is assuming that at this point, the cyber attacker or the event has bypassed your cybersecurity tools. So your endpoint detection response, your network detection response have not stopped the malware getting through. You have the capability through data resilience to manage that environment in an active environment, so that you can make sure that that data cannot be taken away, cannot be compromised, and can be brought back online literally in minutes, not in hours, in days, in weeks, as we see in. I think the latest Verizon data breach report said the average time is 17 to 18 days. That's not good enough in today's environment. We need it back, let's say an hour or two maximum, and I need it back parallel. Do not have things that are dependent on backups or on network connectivity. You don't have to have that today. We can still use the backup system for non-time sensitive recoveries, for disaster recovery, or for IT builds. So you've not wasted the money. This is the evolution that exists in data management today. Excuse me. So what I want to do now is, before we get on to the attendees Q&A, I'd like to introduce Guy Bavley and Elijah Redlinger. Apologies, Elijah is in a location and his camera doesn't work, but we've managed to get a nice picture of Elijah up on the system. The key part on this is that both these gentlemen, I work with day in, day out, that is on there. So, and they are spread by thousands of miles apart. And it's really great to have them to contribute to it. So what I'm going to ask first is, and I'll put this to Guy first, and then I'll have Elijah afterwards. So Guy, do you believe there is a difference between data resilience and data security?
So first of all, Kevin, thank you for having me in this very interesting session. And I really want to thank everybody that are participating and listening to us. It's a great honor to be here and to talk with you. I think there's a key difference between the usual data security mechanisms that we see and data resilience. And you talked about it, I think, in the session today. It's being active. Not usually people wait for the accident to happen, and people, they know that something will happen. In our case, what we do in Actifile is prevent ransomware attack from stealing data or from negligent, careless employees to exfiltrate, again, non-maliciously, the data. So we all know this will happen, and we build a lot of mechanisms, overall security mechanisms, or even data security mechanisms that are anticipating this accident, this, from happening, and trying to prevent that, with the gigabytes and the terabytes and exabytes of data that there is. Resilience means that you're being preemptive. You're trying to anticipate the problem and to avoid it altogether. And being active on that has very concrete use cases. You, with our solution, what you can do is you can apply automatic encryption in areas where there's high risk, and by doing that, you're preventing a hacker that will eventually breach your organization, or your very negligent, highly negligent employee from doing any harm, because the files are protected, they're secured, they're encrypted. Nobody that ever uses it outside the organization without our software installed, our application installed, can open it. So you can sleep better at night because you know that the last mile of data resilience is covered with a solution like Actifile that fits very well in the overall data resilience world. Is that making sense, Kevin?
Yes, thank you very much indeed, Guy. That's great. Elijah, good morning to you, Elijah, and I'd be really welcome for your perspective on this.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Thanks for inviting me here. Yeah, so I would say from a very basic perspective, obviously there's a key difference between data resilience and cyber resilience. Data resilience basically has to do with making sure your data is available and not available to you and not to others. And cyber resilience is really about your security and how secure you are. So, just because you're secure against cyber threats, it doesn't mean your data is secure. There may be other things that can happen to your data besides cyber threats. You could lose your data via deletion, accidental. You could lose it via hardware issues, whatever else. So definitely you need to look differently at your data resilience than your cybersecurity or your cyber resilience.
Thank you very much indeed. So let's go on to the second question, and I'll pose this to Elijah first. So do you believe that data resilience is not being considered adequately as a critical factor in businesses?
Sure. I think, first of all, I think it's not even on the level of data resilience. I think taking care of data, period, is not being taken seriously enough. And I'm sure there's a host of experts on this conference today from different venues of IT and of course from security. And you think about it, you build quite oftenly a lot of security mechanisms to prevent something from happening, okay? And I'm guessing, but I'm seeing it across many customers of ours, that the elements that Kevin described earlier, how much, where, what type, which users are interacting with the data, is something you're not aware of. And that's a key element in any data resilience. You cannot secure what you don't know of, any of the dimensions of the data. So I think it's not considered adequately because people care about data, but they're building all kinds of fences and mechanisms for preventing the catastrophe to happen, from a hacker to go in or from a user to leak the information outside unintentionally. But eventually this will happen, and the data itself is not measured, is not tracked, is not audited, and not preemptively secured in a way that if the catastrophe, if this trouble will happen, then you have measures in place to prevent it and preemptively avoid it altogether. So my advice is start by, tracking, measuring, monitoring user and application behavior when it comes to data. Track how much data do you have, see how much is flowing in and out of the organization, classify it according to different types of sensitivity, and eventually apply directly on the data the preemptive measures that if all hell breaks loose and somebody got in, then you never know what happened and you have nothing in place. That's what data resilience is all about, I think.
Elijah, it'd be interesting on your perspective. Yeah, and you and I, we both spent time at Symantec in the past, and everyone focuses on the security side of things. So, data resilience tends to be the, I would say, the poor brother in this, or not?
Yeah. Data resilience is definitely something that people do not consider enough. I think that they realize their data is important, and I think they put steps in, whether it's backup in many cases, or clustering, or failover, or other types of products to try and make sure their data is actively protected in some manner. But I think that there's definitely a lot more that could be done. And given how important the data is, when your data is lost, either it's lost because you don't have access to it anymore, or it's lost because somebody else has taken it. In either case, that can be tremendously bad for a corporation. I mean, companies go out of business when they lose their data. So I think people don't properly realize how important that is. I think they see that with cyber threats, cyber resilience, but I'm not sure that even at that, they go far enough on cyber resilience. And I know the question was only about data resilience, but to be honest, I think both of them could be improved more. The main issue is there's always this risk cost trade-off, right? And I think that some people may think that the data resilience is too costly to put in place. And I think that's something that that can be looked into more, because I don't think it has to be costly to put a good data resilience infrastructure in place.
That's an interesting point as a sideline to this. So, you know, people always talk in the industry that when, let's call it industry analysts, and I put myself in there because I used to be at IDC. But it's like, well, if you're going to introduce something else, that's another cost to the business. But is there a part of this for both of you gentlemen where you could sit and think, well, wait there, you can use some of your existing expenditure and rationalize it to bolster the data resilience side of things?
Yes, I can definitely see, Kevin, that expenditure in the world of IT can help with data resilience, for sure. So if you're looking at how your data is growing, whether it's structured or unstructured, how your data is growing, and you can show, and that's one of the things that Actifile is providing, you can show how your data risk is growing. And you can quantify that in US dollars, in monetary value. There is a very good connection now between a CISO or a CIO and the C-level executive of the company, because you're showing them that this week we had $65 million worth of risk. By the way, real numbers, $65 million worth of risk, and we're expanding. And this is the real total potential damage to your business, because this quantification is not just based on fines. It's based primarily on the loss of customers, the loss of reputations, auditors, and attorneys, God forbid, and so on. So there can be a very good connection, straight line connection between your expenditure on the business, the quantities of data that you're accumulating, and the data risk that is growing and needs to be resilient towards any type of risk. And by the way, what are we trying to protect all of us, across all the security stack? Eventually, we're trying to protect primarily the data. And again, you don't know how much data and how much risk there is affiliated with it. It's very hard to convince that there is a need for additional investments to protect it.
Yeah. Elijah.
And Yeah, and I think part of the issue is that I think with data resilience, we're kind of stuck in a groove, and we think there's only these three types of solutions, or two types of solutions, whatever. There's backup, and there's clustering, and there's, these kind of solutions, and trying to push every data issue in to be solved by only these types of solutions may be part of the issue, because these traditional solutions can be very costly. And looking at saying, hey, maybe this is best only solving these types of data problems and using other solutions that are not commonly known about to solve other types of data issues, I think is one of the key problems, because most people think that maybe they have experience with protecting data, and then they just install backup, right? Or something like that. And that alone is not enough to offer real data resilience.
Yeah. And I think that's, both the answers hit it where, and I can remember, as probably you can, when VMware brought out virtualized servers, and everyone said, no, we've got a physical servers. This is how we've always done it. And it's like, there were so many negatives around operationalizing that environment, and now it's commonplace, and I can remember from the many years ago introducing the first virtual disks subsystems. People need to think differently, in business, and that is the whole thing. It's not a total mindset change. It's just being open to understand there's a different way to achieve a more optimum position for data resilience. And I think if we look at the third question, for both of you, do you think there is something stopping businesses increasing their capability of data resilience?
Oh, it's a very interesting question, because I have a very strong feeling talking to customers and partners that they believe that it's very complicated, time-consuming, long projects, non-successful projects, and so on, based on what they know from the past, and old technologies, old solutions, and so on. So I think there is a perception in the market that that this is something not easily solvable on one hand, and costly on the other hand. And they believe that the right way to resolve it is to install another EDR, to better configure the firewall, to add multi-factor authentication, to do all of those things. Which, again, I'm not against it. I don't think it's useless. But if I were to say to you that you did a very good job putting an alarm on your jewelry store window and a very good lock on your jewelry store door, and you did nothing in inventory whatsoever, and moreover, if one of your diamonds is stolen, then it's there outside your jewelry store without any security or protection. Most people think this is not achievable, and most people think it's too complicated for them to resolve. And there are brand new solutions, NewShield and ActiveFile. They're very straightforward. They're very simple. They're not built for expertise and complexity. On the other hand, they're built for a cloud-first hybrid work world, again, for the new world. And I think those perceptions, those misconceptions are stopping people from implementing more data resilience, types of solutions going forward.
Elijah, your perspective on that?
Yep, I definitely agree with Guy on this one. A lot of customers believe it may be too complicated or too costly to implement anything else in the data resilience area. What they have is adequate. So I kind of see both sides. They either say, hey, we've got plenty of protection in data resilience, we don't need any more. Or they go the other side and they say, oh, it's too complicated, we can't do anything else besides backup or something like that. And so you get customers that are companies that are looking at one way or the other. And I think that, again, gets back maybe to the previous point, whereas not realizing there are other potential solutions to the issue. So I do think that part of this issue comes in to not realizing what's out on the market. And that's a very difficult thing, just given how much is out on the market. To try and look at everything is not maybe feasible.
Yeah. And I think my point on this, or my perspective, is I think everybody knows that it is acceptable to go out and acquire asset management products, things that will go out and find what devices you have that is in your infrastructure. And the reason for that is those devices have a tangible net present book value, let's call it that, because you acquired it. You bought a laptop for $400, $1,000, you bought a server for $5,000, and you want to know where they are. But there's this inherent misbelief that data does not have the same tangible value. So if you said, I would now go and buy a data resilient and data discovery product that can find the value of the data, so that if it is compromised, lost, non-accessible, I know the value to my business of that, in the same way that I know the value if I don't have access to these servers or to these devices as well. My final question to you guys, and it's always good to turn the tables on you because it's normally the other way around. So, if you could suggest two functions or areas that the people that are on this conference today should examine to increase their data resilience, what would they be?
So I would venture to say that
two, by the way, you're only allowed two because I know you'll come up with a whole list of them. So you can have two.
So I'll say the two most important things are: start quantifying your data risk, and by doing that you'll understand the different dimensions of the risk, who, where, what type, what's going in, out, and all of that, but quantify that, not just detail it, but quantify that in monetary value. And second of all, start, auditing it. So not just do a one-time data risk assessment and understand it what it is today. Start monitoring, start auditing it, because at least you'll have an ongoing understanding that will help you to prepare for the future. And in case there is an issue, there is a problem, there is a breach or an audit, you're already there. I think those are the first more easily steps that any organization can do even tomorrow morning.
Right. Elijah.
Yeah, this is an easy question. Obviously, there's lots of things that could be done. I think the two most vital that we see are, one is quick data recovery and one is quick system recovery. And the reason I say that is because many companies don't realize how long it takes to recover the data once there's an incident. And, they say, oh, we've got this set up, we've got that set up, and we're going to be back up and running quickly. And then they find out weeks later that they're still not back up and running. And I think having some form of quick recovery on their systems, on all their endpoints and servers, as well as, both for the data side and for the machine side.
No, I think that's good. And you make a really valid point there is from both sides. From Elijah's side, I did an event a few weeks ago and asked people how long they thought it would take for them to recover a terabyte file. And I gave them the option of, an hour, 2 hours, longer than 3 hours. And they all thought that they could do it within an hour. And I told them exactly what the bottlenecks were to recover that back. The average time is over 3 hours to bring a terabyte back if you have the network connectivity, the target storage for it to go through, and accessibility by the device. So all of those dependencies. On Guy's side, it's really interesting because people talk about knowing data and they think this fits into data loss prevention, and it's not. It is nothing to do with that. And many times, and I've been involved in it myself, where somebody has been breached, and the first thing, once they know they've been breached, is what have we lost? What is the value of it? And the reason they say that is they don't know where the data was, and where it's gone to. So it could be the fact that somebody's come in and just stole 50 megabytes, but the company cannot afford to deal with it that way because they don't understand it. They have to deal with it as though somebody has stolen a terabyte. So you throw everything at it, not just the small piece of saying, that data is fine, it's not gone out, it's only this small part. Or it's the adverse of, yes, you have a problem because somebody attempted to take all this data out of the system through the command control channels that were there. So it's a really, it's a challenging time, and the people on this call don't have masses amount of time to look at stuff. But what we want them, as you've explained, is just looking at a couple of things that they can do that are very easily understandable, and they are. And Cybrilliance, the people we talk to, including Edward and his relationships and network, realize that this capability exists now. You don't have to deal with what happened in the past. If it was, we would still be riding horses and not electric cars. So life moves on. So thank you very much, gentlemen. I'll hand back over to Edward to see if there's any questions at all.
Hi, thank you very much, Kevin, Guy, and Elisha. I don't see any questions coming from the audience. I don't have any questions myself. I just want to thank you for a very interesting session, because I'm sure that many people might not have thought of data resilience. So you really, you really opened up some eyes, and probably in this situation, by introducing something that might be new to a whole lot of people. And I can see the benefit of it. It makes a whole lot of sense. And I think we'll probably see more and more people just wanting to now engage this and develop data resilience, as opposed to just only cyber resilience. So thank you very much, gentlemen. I want to wish you a very good afternoon from wherever you are. And thank you again for participating.
Thank you
very much.
Cheers.
For the remaining participants, we'll go directly over to our closing session, and I'll see you in a couple of seconds there. Gentlemen, thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.